August 18th, 2010, a warm, humid summer evening at Vortex Springs near Ponce de Leon, Florida. At around 7:30 p.m., 30-year-old open water diver Ben McDaniel was seen by two fellow divers as he began his descent into the depths of the Vortex Spring cave. As the sun rose the following day, Ben's vehicle was still sitting in the parking lot. Another day would pass before employees at the dive shop noticed that Ben's vehicle had still not moved. Fearing the worst, staff at the dive shop notified police. Had Ben McDaniel suffered a horrible fate inside the cave, or was something far more nefarious at play? In today's video, we will be discussing one of the most perplexing cave diving mysteries of all time. This is Cave Diving Mysteries, the Ben McDaniel story. Welcome to The Cellar. Ben McDaniel was born on April 15, 1980, in Memphis, Tennessee. Ben was the oldest of three sons born to Shelby and Patty McDaniel. From all reports, Ben was close with both of his brothers, Tim and Paul. Ben's parents had worked hard and achieved a relatively considerable amount of wealth. Ben was motivated by what his parents had accomplished, and in his 20s he built his own construction business. As Ben closed in on turning 30, every aspect of his life would seemingly begin to fall apart. Due to the economic recession at the time, Ben's construction business ran out of money, which led to him owing the IRS around $50,000. To make matters worse, at the same time his business failed, his marriage joined suit and ultimately ended in divorce. As if all this wasn't hard enough, Ben's youngest brother passed away tragically. Ben and his brother Paul were about 6 years apart in age, but it never stopped the two from consistently spending time together. They were very close and often went rock climbing with one another. To make matters worse, Ben had been the one to discover his brother when he passed away. He found him unconscious and made efforts to resuscitate him, but it was too late. It was initially believed that Paul had passed due to a stroke, but toxicology reports would come back eventually, and they declared his death as being due to anoxic encephalopathy due to combined drug toxicity. Needless to say, Ben's life had been on quite the downward spiral. Both his work and personal life had fallen apart, and this pushed Ben to move back home with his parents. Shelby and Patty McDaniel saw firsthand that their eldest child was suffering, and they soon encouraged Ben to take some time and get away. See, the couple had a family vacation home in Santa Rosa Beach on the Emerald Coast of the Florida Panhandle. Ben's parents offered financial support while Ben took a bit of a sabbatical. Ben was reluctant at first, but he soon took them up on the offer. Ben and his chocolate lab would soon head off to Florida, moving into the beach house in April of 2010. After a few weeks of living there, it became clear that this stay in Florida had really helped Ben return to his old ways. Ben's parents and his girlfriend expressed that he was finally moving past all of his recent setbacks in life. Growing up, Ben had always enjoyed scuba diving, and while in Florida, Ben had taken the opportunity to get back involved, and in a lot of ways, he almost became a bit obsessed with diving. Ben's favorite place to go diving soon became Vortex Spring. Vortex Spring is a commercially operated recreation, camping, and dive park located near Ponce de Leon, Florida. It is said to be the largest diving facility in the entire state. To give some more context, Vortex Spring is a cold freshwater spring that produces around 28 million US gallons of water daily. According to what I've read online, the spring consists of a 200-foot, 61-meter basin with sloping sides and a cave which links the spring to the Floridian aquifer. Vortex Spring is a popular diving area for both experienced and novice divers alike. The cavern entrance is located 58 feet or 18 meters below the surface. Its opening is measured at 9 by 12 feet or 2.7 meters by 3.7 meters. The cave is then accessible to 310 feet or 94 meters, with further passage being blocked by a steel grate. Only experienced divers are allowed to venture beyond the steel grate. In fact, you need to show the dive shop that you are cave certified before they will open the gate and give you access. To put it as simply as possible, in order to get cave diving certification, you have to go through a lot more training as well as make numerous dives with a certified trainer. Now, throughout the 90s, there were over a dozen deaths in the Vortex Spring cave. With deaths piling up, it was clear that changes needed to be made, and thus the gate was installed to prevent the inexperienced from venturing farther than they should. Ben would spend a lot of time at Vortex Spring. His passion for diving seemed to be growing every day, to the point that Ben wanted to get certified as an instructor so he could find a job doing what he now loved. At the time, Ben was not certified for cave diving, but he had been working hard, researching and hoping to get certified in the near future. With all that said, that now brings us to August 18th, 2010. Ben would leave his parents' vacation home and make his way to Vortex Spring. Ben would proceed to enter the water, and from all reports, he completed one dive during the day. Other divers reported seeing Ben in the area of the cave entrance. According to those other divers, he seemed like he was planning something. Soon, Ben exited the water and was caught on security camera entering the dive shop. At the dive shop, he paid to fill his tanks back up. The rest of the afternoon and into the evening, Ben was seen hanging out near the spring. He was testing equipment and making notes in his dive log. As night approached, Ben called his mother and spoke briefly. Following this phone call, he prepped for another dive, and at 7:30 p.m., he entered the water. As Ben headed in the direction of the cave entrance, dive shop employees Cronin and Eduardo Terran were in the process of making their way back from a dive. From all reports, this was a common thing for them, as they typically went diving together on Wednesday evenings. The pair saw Ben descending, wearing a helmet and with his lights on. Eduardo Terran's made the presumption that Ben was looking to enter the cave. In fact, he had suspected for some time now that he had been forcing his way through the grate and into the cave. In that moment, Terran made the decision to follow Ben down. He approached the gate and opened the door for Ben. As we move forward in the story, I want to remind everyone that Ben was not certified for cave diving. Soon, Eduardo Terran and Cronin exited the water, and according to them, they got themselves situated and soon left to go get coffee at Terran's house. It was later reported that Cronin and Terran both knew Ben, and on occasions prior, they had waited around until they knew Ben was safely resurfacing. What some find odd is that they did not on this particular evening, even though they knew Ben was entering the cave. Soon, night fell, and the springs grew quiet. Nothing appeared out of place except one vehicle still sitting in the lot that shouldn't have been there. As the sun rose the next day, Ben's vehicle was still sitting in the parking lot, right where he left it the day before. According to staff, that next day was very busy, and no one noticed Ben's vehicle still sitting there. It wasn't until another day went by that staff realized something wasn't right. Ben had not been seen, yet his vehicle clearly had not moved. This prompted dive shop staff to notify the police. The police would swiftly arrive on scene, and the very first thing they did was close off the spring and cave. They didn't want anyone else coming and going as they tried to determine what happened to Ben McDaniel. As the police began their initial search of the area, they took a look at Ben's vehicle. Inside, they found Ben's wallet with $1,100 in cash, his cell phone, his dive logs, and a map. These dive logs and map clearly showed police that Ben had indeed been exploring the cave. The police continued to search the area, but Ben's wetsuit and other diving equipment was never recovered. As news of Ben's disappearance spread through the community, police went and did a search of his parents' beach house. They located his dog inside, who appeared to have not eaten in a couple of days. All signs were pointing to Ben entering the cave and never coming back out. With the weekend fast approaching, divers began to volunteer for what was now being perceived as a recovery effort. Ben's parents were notified and swiftly made their way to Florida. As divers prepped to enter the water, the police brought cadaver dogs onto the site. From all reports, the dogs constantly led police to the water's surface. Just another indication that Ben had entered the cave and most likely drowned. As experienced divers continued their preparation, the police were soon notified about just how dangerous the recovery could be. The cave's depth, narrow tunnels, and silty conditions made finding Ben extremely difficult. Experienced divers entered the cave over the weekend. They investigated small crevices and fissures. In prior cave diving incidents, Divers, typically in a panic, would attempt to exit the cave as quickly as possible when their tanks ran low. More often than not, in their panic, they would end up wedged into a place they simply could not escape. During that first weekend, a diver nearly lost his life, further showing just how dangerous this recovery effort was going to be. As the weekend came to a close, no sign of Ben McDaniel was found. Divers may not have found Ben, but they did make a few discoveries. First, they found 2 tanks near the entrance of the cave. These tanks were determined to have belonged to Ben. Another tank was recovered about 200 feet or 61 meters inside the cave. When these tanks were tested, they were found to only contain normal air, not the specialized gas mixture that is required for diving at the depths within this cave. Now, to give some more understanding, diving at these depths with straight-up air could lead to something that is called nitrogen narcosis. Nitrogen narcosis is an almost intoxicating, anesthetic-like state that divers can experience when breathing compressed air at deep underwater depths. It's caused by the effects of increased nitrogen, partial pressure in the blood, leading to impairment of cognitive and physical abilities. Symptoms can include euphoria, impaired judgment, lightheadedness, and numbness. A special gas mixture is crucial in cave diving at depth. By using gas mixtures that lower the nitrogen and/or oxygen content, cave divers can minimize the risks of developing nitrogen narcosis and oxygen toxicity, allowing them to then explore deeper into underwater cave systems. So why did Ben not have the correct mixture? Well, this has been a baffling piece of information. Based on Ben's dive logs, police concluded that he had traveled into the cave numerous times before. Also, Ben had done a lot of research on cave diving, and knowing what kind of mixture to use would have been a major component of that research. Authorities also concluded that there was no way Ben had entered the cave system before without the proper mixture of gases. If he had gone in before with straight oxygen, he most likely would have never made it back out alive. So why did Ben seem so unprepared on this particular dive? With the weekend search over, investigators were left with far more questions than answers in the disappearance of Ben McDaniel. On a yacht somewhere in the Bahamas, Edd Sorenson, a highly experienced veteran cave diver and recovery specialist, received a message from his wife about Ben McDaniel. Edd was currently leading an expedition in the Bahamas, but after receiving a text about Ben, he hopped on a flight and arrived in Florida the very next day. To give some further backstory on Edd, Edd has nearly 2,500 log dives. He has been described as being able to go where other divers simply cannot. Edd spoke with authorities and went over where searches had taken place. Edd was determined to locate Ben, and he soon prepared to dive into the vortex. Edd looked over Ben's maps and decided to use smaller tanks as well as a diver propulsion vehicle in order to increase just how far he could travel into the cave system. Edd would make 3 successful dives that day, and according to Edd, he traveled 1,700 feet or 520 meters into the cave system. This was 200 feet or 61 meters further than the sections that Ben had mapped out. In the end, Edd found no sign of Ben McDaniel. In fact, there were no signs at all that Ben had gone any deeper into the cave system, and there were no signs that a body was decaying in the water. Now, typically, when something is decaying within a cave system, there will be signs of increased fish that may be feeding on whatever is decaying. Edd made an effort to look into the much smaller areas and crevices as well, but he plain and simply found no signs of markings on the walls or disturbed silt. Edd felt confident that if Ben had traveled even deeper into the cave, there would have been some sign of a disturbance left in his wake. Now, Ben was 6'1", or 185 centimeters tall, and weighed around 210 pounds or 95 kilograms. Edd was about 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters shorter than Ben, and he also weighed about 20 pounds or 9.1 kilograms less than Ben. Based on all this, Edd stated that there was no way Ben could have gotten through some of the more narrower passages. Edd stated that, "I know what I'm doing, and I barely made it through." Ben had far less experience than Edd, so it just doesn't seem feasible that Ben could have made it to where a professional, like Edd, could not. In the end, Edd made a final determination that Ben McDaniel was not in the cave. But if he wasn't in the cave, then where in the world was he? Ben's disappearance continued to stump officials and divers alike. His parents searching for answers, were willing to do whatever it took to find their son. Soon, Ben's parents hired Steve Keene, the man who had originally mapped out the Vortex Spring cave back in 2003. Steve would dive 7 times. Following that 7th dive, he too found no sign of Ben. Next, Ben's parents agreed to a deal with the Fort Lauderdale Police Department. They would give them $54,000, the price to replace their remotely operated underwater vehicle. The police were concerned that the vehicle could get lost or damaged in the cave, and they were unwilling to send it in until they had a guarantee by Ben's parents to replace it, if necessary. Soon, that remote vehicle was sent in, but it too found no sign of Ben. Weeks would continue to go by, and divers would continue to search. Over the course of 36 days, 16 divers went looking for Ben McDaniel's body. No sign of him was found, and soon weeks would turn into months. Now, as the cave was being searched, police also searched the nearby area. With no sign of Ben found, the police had to start questioning if he was ever in the cave at all. Police started to investigate and look to see if Ben's body had washed out through the spring's outlet. They also scoured the surrounding land, checking to see if Ben's body had been removed from the cave and disposed of before police began their search. As all this was going on, many started to wonder if perhaps Ben McDaniel had staged his disappearance. Life had been difficult for Ben as of late. Could he have wanted to fake his death and start over on his own? If you ask his parents and girlfriend, they just don't believe it. According to them, Ben had been enjoying his stay in Florida. He had been passionate about his diving to the point he was planning and looking forward to the future. His life was supposedly on an upswing, so why disappear or fake your own death now? The cadaver dogs would continue to search the nearby woods, and as they did, authorities began testing the water. Over the course of a few months, the water within Vortex Springs was tested 30 times. These tests were looking to see if there was an increased presence of bacteria. An increase could indicate the presence of a decomposing human body. And in the end, the 30 tests showed 0 increase in bacteria. Another piece of information that points to Ben not being in the cave. As the investigation continued, police turned their attention on those who had last seen Ben McDaniel, the 2 dive shop workers. Could they have done something to Ben? Both employees were interviewed by the police extensively, and in the end, they stayed true to their stories. They even underwent polygraph tests and passed with no issues. Seemingly, just another dead end in this case. Months went by in the case, and tons of resources were put into recovering Ben's body, but nothing was found. Not knowing what else they could do, Ben's parents soon put up a reward, hoping that this would motivate divers to make more attempts at searching the Vortex Cave. For many, this was a dangerous offer, as it tempted divers with minimal experience to go searching for Ben. The reward began at $10,000, and after some time, it was increased to $30,000. Soon, that worst-case scenario came true, as a diver from Biloxi, Mississippi named Larry Higginbotham died in the cave at Vortex Spring. It appeared that Larry had gotten himself in a pinch and simply couldn't find his way back out. Now, there was technically no evidence proving that Larry was there to find Ben, but many divers believed that that is exactly what he was there for. As criticism soon piled up, Ben's family had to make the tough decision to pull the reward. No one wanted to go and recover another body from the vortex. It was now 2011, and Ben's family had to start coming to terms that perhaps their son wasn't in the cave. The family soon hired a private investigator who started looking more and more into the events around Ben's disappearance. The investigator soon made some discoveries. It turns out, multiple people at the dive shop had criminal records, and the owner himself was facing serious criminal charges. From what's been reported, the owner of the dive shop at one point had been owed money by an employee. When that employee didn't pay, said employee was taken into the woods and assaulted with a baseball bat. A pretty violent and serious altercation, if you ask me. The dive shop owner was eventually charged for these crimes, but then something else bizarre took place. A cookout was being held by the dive shop, and during said cookout, the owner allegedly fell down a set of stairs and injured his head. Within a few days, the injury took a turn for the worse, and a month later, the dive shop owner passed away from the severity of his injuries. Could there be a connection between Ben's disappearance and everything that was going on with the dive shop owner? Another report soon came in that on the day Ben disappeared, a diver had a confrontation with several teenagers on the property. The kids were reportedly drinking, and the diver confronted them about this. Could this diver have been Ben? It has been reported that the teenagers left the area, but did they come back? Maybe they returned, looking for some sort of revenge, and instead of just hurting Ben, perhaps something more nefarious took place. At this point in the story, we simply do not know what happened to Ben McDaniel. There are so many theories, but little evidence to support any of them. Occam's razor states that the simplest answer is usually the correct one. So did Ben enter the cave and succumb to a horrible fate that all divers fear and risk every time they plunge into the dark, watery depths? Did Ben get turned around and run out of oxygen? Did the Vortex Spring cave become his watery grave? If it did, then why were there no signs of him found? All the bacteria tests came back negative. There were no signs that an uptick in fish feeding on something had occurred. And the biggest thing I would point to is that of Edd Sorenson. Edd is a legend amongst the dive community, and after numerous attempts to locate Ben, Edd came out of the cave feeling rather positive that there was no way Ben was down there. Edd is the utmost expert, so is he right? And if he is right, then where is Ben? Now, did he run away to start a new life? I guess it's possible, but it doesn't seem likely to me. He left a large amount of cash along with his wallet in his vehicle. He also, according to his parents and girlfriend, seemed to be doing so much better. They felt like Ben had finally gotten back on track and found a passion in what he wanted to do moving forward. As bad as life got, personally and financially, Ben wasn't in all that terrible of a situation. His parents had wealth and they were funding his time away in Florida. From everything I've read, his parents supported him in every way. Also, Ben's dog was left behind, and when he was found, it was clear he hadn't eaten in a few days. I just can't see Ben faking his disappearance. His parents were there every step of the way to help him restart his life. It would be far more difficult to fake his disappearance and start over on his own with no one to help him. Now, let's turn to foul play. There were reports that the dive shop workers and owner knew that Ben was forcing his way into the cave. Could there have been an altercation? Could Ben have gotten into it with the dive shop owner and things took a turn for the worse? I don't know if this is the answer, but I do wonder. Now I would like to touch on a theory that I'm starting to like more and more in this case. Did Ben go into the cave and tragically pass on? If he did, the dive shop workers and owners may have found his body the next day. Fearing that another death could shut them down, maybe they removed him from the cave and disposed of his body somewhere. This may seem a little far-fetched, but it would explain why a full day went by before the police were contacted. Maybe the dive shop workers saw Ben's vehicle and feared for the worst, and then they went looking for him before they opened to the public. Perhaps they found Ben and pulled him out. Not knowing what to do, they very well may have disposed of him, and we may never know where the body is. Now, all these theories have been discussed, but we still, to this very day, have no idea what happened to Ben McDaniel. It's at this point that I want to hear from each and every one of you. What do you think happened to Ben McDaniel? Please let me know in the comment section below. I would love to get a good conversation going. Also, please, if there's only one thing you do after watching my content, then let it be you smashing that subscribe button right now. A quick like and subscribe goes a long way in forcing the algorithm to push my video. And with all that said, a big thank you to each and every one of you for tuning in to another episode. If you enjoy the content that I make here on the channel, then please hit that like and subscribe button. YouTube seems to be suppressing my channel as of late, so a simple like and comment would go a long way in helping the algorithm push my video. Also, you can check the description box below and find the link to my merch store and a link to my membership tier for the channel. For only $2.99 a month, you can help support my channel a little further and get some cool perks to go with it. One of those perks is having your name listed here in the end of each of my videos. So thank you to all my Cellar Dweller members. Also, if you'd like to submit a real-life scary story of any kind, please do so using the email I have linked in the description box below. As always, I do all the research, writing, recording, and editing for the channel myself, so anything that you do to help support the channel is greatly appreciated. And until next time, I will see each and every one of you again as we head back into the cellar.